Thank you, everybody.
I have to do a little cleanup. We're not at 33 teams yet, although if somebody here wants to buy one, I'll see you outside. And according to Sportico, the average valuation as of this week is 1.8 billion a team, not 1.3, and we're still undervalued. So
we're going to talk about that.
That may discourage the line outside. Anyway, it's good to see everybody, and it's great to be here. So thank you to Sportico. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming. Would like to start out with just a few personal items and then move into the business of the NHL and hockey.
I didn't know we were going to have an Oprah moment. Okay.
So you've been doing this a long time. I guess for the crowd, does anybody know how many commissioners of the National Hockey League there have been?
Yeah, that was right.
That's like you're at a Grateful Dead concert, or you're saying one? Yes, one commissioner. So, like, since you started, how has the job evolved since 1993 to where you are today?
Well, I think, I mean, just to put it in context, before me there were presidents, and part of my deal when I left the NBA in 1981 was I was being brought in to modernize things, the way we operated, the way we presented ourselves, the game on the ice. And I believed that it was important to send a signal that we were going to be like other leagues in that regard. So president was kind of historic, old school, be commissioner. What's really happened, it's not so much about hockey per se. Yes, we have stronger ownership than we've ever had before. We're in more places than we've ever been. When I took over, we had just admitted our 23rd and 24th franchises. Now we're at 32. And we needed to stabilize and strengthen our franchises with ownership. We improved our footprint. We did better in terms of the distribution of our content, particularly in the United States. Was never an issue in Canada. But the world has been evolving, and I think that's the biggest change. I've been doing this so long. I think I've been doing this 10 years longer than the iPhone has been on the market. When I came into the league, there were no websites for not just the NHL, for anybody. You know, the whole way that people have been consuming their sports. Obviously, there was no sports betting. We didn't have digitally enhanced dashboards. We didn't have puck and player tracking. But everything we've been doing is evolving with technology to make sure that our fans have a better, more intense connection with the game, and that they have an experience that they want, which is what particularly younger sports fans, you know, Gen Zs, Gen As want. And so it's really been not about changing the game, although we did some economic changes to make what I think is a situation where we have the best competitive balance in terms of what the competition's like. We have a rational economic system. And so all of these things went into the bundle because this type of business, it's never one thing. I know sports media likes to treat it like a game. What's the one thing that decided the game? It's not. It's been everything. And it's about being innovative and progressive and responsive.
So how did we move on from like the Spanos type ownership era?
That wasn't very nice. You know, actually, it was what we learned from that. And that was a long time ago.
It was an eye-opener. I remember we were financing teams then.
You didn't do that one, I hope.
No.
What happened was, and people went to jail for it, it was the perfect fraud. That somebody who claimed to have a certain level of resources and actually had documentation from a bank, which will go nameless, verifying that he had those assets. And that person who gave the documentation, I believe, went to jail. Spanos went to jail. But the good news is he only, despite the 30 for 30 documentary And the way it was perceived by him and others, he really only owned the franchise for about 2 weeks.
Right.
And we got him bounced. But obviously, the level of due diligence and actually the way we transact things now is, in effect, what happened in that case was, you know, when every circuit breaker goes wrong, somebody can pull off a fraud. So, for example, the bank, the owner of the club at the time wanted the money as quickly as possible. And there was a bank, which will remain nameless, and I don't think exists anymore.
Does not exist.
Does not exist. The bank closed the transaction and closed the loan. Oh, hi, John. How are you? I know that laugh from anywhere. The bank closed the transaction. Spanos told the then owner, "All my money's tied up. If you want to close, you got to wait 2 weeks to get my share," which was red flag number one. And the owner closed, the bank closed, and the bank was supposed to get a certain amount of money in escrow. Let's assume it was $10 million. Well, Spanos sent a wire for 1,000, just missing a few zeros, and nobody at the bank checked the wire to confirm it. So the bank didn't do what it was supposed to. In 2 respects, it closed without verifying that the equity was actually putting in, and they didn't confirm the wire. Any one of those, either one of those, would have let you know that something was wrong. The last thing was the owner didn't tell us that he, in fact, Spano didn't pay what he was supposed to on time. And about 2 weeks after the closing, I'll never forget this, I was in Montreal for a game. I remember exactly where I was standing, and the then owner called me on my cell phone and said, "We have a problem." I go, "What's the problem? You should be gone." He goes, "Well, at the closing, Spano never paid me what he was supposed to." And I go, "You're kidding, right?" He goes, "No." I go, "Well, obviously he doesn't have the money." And I knew at that moment that he'd... So it wasn't really us who was defrauded, it was the prior owner. But we got the club back, and then we went through some trials and tribulations of a variety of forms of ownership until we got Scott Malkin and John Ledecky, and after that, everything was perfect, including UBS Arena, which, if you haven't seen it, is spectacular. It's as nice as any arena there is, and so the punchline is good, and I'm still irritated that you asked that question.
All right, back to the Oprah moment.
Okay, yes.
So, what hobbies do you have, Gary? We know you watch a lot of hockey, obviously. You're at games, you watch it on your TV, you watch it on your phone.
Watch it everywhere, all the time, go to lots of games.
What else do you do?
I ski, I play bad golf, and I spend a lot of time indulging my grandchildren, 8 of them ranging in age from 6 months to 18 years old in college.
Got it. Did you play hockey ever growing up?
Only for fun. And, you know, I played intramural at Cornell, where I went, but I wasn't good enough to play at a more elite level. But if we're talking personal, so my grandson, who's at Cornell, I met my wife at Cornell. All 3 of my kids went to Cornell. 2 of my in-law kids went to Cornell, and my oldest grandchild is at Cornell. The last 3 years when he was in high school, his high school hockey team, of which in the last year he was a co-captain, alternate captain, won the New Jersey State Public School Championship 2 out of the last 3 years. So there is some hockey in the family. If it's not on the business side, then it's on the playing side.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Do you think the players get enough kind of props for the amount of work that goes in? I played high school hockey. I remember taking my bike with all my gear on my back to the bus, 11 o'clock.
Your parents wouldn't drive you?
Parents didn't drive
Wow,
me.
you had a neglected child. We need to call social services.
I wasn't barefoot, but
Could have been.
we had practice at the South Mountain Arena at 11 p.m. on a weeknight, and that was basically high school hockey.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there on the youth side there's enough appreciation for how much work is committed to hockey.
And there's also not enough appreciation for the number of programs since the time you were playing in high school now. You know, New Jersey has exponentially increased it. The best data point I can give on that off the top of my head is when the Samuelis purchased the Ducks in Anaheim, which is now 20, 25 years ago. I think there were 5 high school hockey teams in Orange County, and there are now 60, more than 60. Hockey is growing at all levels. Part of that is also due to the expansion we've had, because going from 24 to 32 teams in the last 2 decades has really increased our footprint. I think people, I'll ramble a little, but make it easier for you and keep you from asking more bad questions. You doing okay, John? What people don't understand that our footprint historically has obviously been less in the United States than the other 3 major sports. Okay, we have 7 teams in Canada, which takes us down to 25 teams, and we have 3 teams in Long Island, New York, and New Jersey, which takes us down to 23, and then we have 2 in Southern California, 22. So when people look at us and they compare our ratings and our fan engagement, we're really a North American sport, truly. So, for example, Game 7 of the Florida-Edmonton Stanley Cup Final drew, I think, 16.6 million viewers in Canada and the United States combined, which combined is more than any Stanley Cup, more than any NBA Final or World Series game, other than one that just happened with the Dodgers New York, for obvious reasons, in the last 5 years. And this was small market South Florida and small market Canada, Edmonton, and we still managed to do that well. I think based on the way our game is accessible, based on the speed, the skill of our players, and our competitive balance, we're engaging more fans and we're continuing to grow.
I want to talk a little bit about Florida, the place I live. You're my neighbor there. I think moving to Florida was very controversial in terms of expansion for the Panthers. We sold the Panthers to Vinny Viola in 1993. Jeff Vinnick bought the Tampa Bay Lightning, which we just bought in 2010. I think you took a lot of heat for hockey in Florida. It's never going to work. There was tons of questions around it. Yet in the last 4 years, they've won 3 Stanley Cups in Florida. What do you attribute that success to?
The Stanley Cups, you know, and when whether it's Sportico or Forbes or now CNBC does the valuation, there's too much focus on the win in the short term, because if you have a good competitive balance, people are going to win, people are going to lose. It's more about the stability of the business. What's great is I think Tampa's had 400 straight sellouts. The building in South Florida is, for the Panthers, is now sold out, and there's grassroots hockey being played all over the place. You know, criticism about going to Florida. Yeah, I got criticism. Tampa, we got it in South Florida, we got it in Nashville, we got it in Dallas, we got it in Arizona, we got it in Anaheim, and we even got it in Vegas. I mean, people don't really focus on the depth of what you can create with a good product and good investment. I mean, we were the first ones into Vegas, and you know, we got criticized at the time it would never work. It may have been the most successful expansion ever of any of the major sports, and now everybody thinks they invented Vegas as a sports mecca, and they tend to forget that we were there first, and people said it wouldn't work. It's working great. The Golden Knights have been sensational.
Does that dispel this whole large market, small market disparity in terms of like, oh, the small markets are never going to be able to compete even though you have a fixed salary cap?
No, actually, the combination of a salary cap and revenue sharing gives it that everybody can compete, and that's how our system was designed. You know, in other sports, if whether it's no cap or a luxury tax, you see wide disparities and not competitive balance. No matter who you root for, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions for a team that's in the actual act of rebuilding, and you're a fan, you can, at least at this stage of the season, think you have a shot at winning, making the playoffs. If you look at how our regular seasons have unfolded for the last 20 years, We don't know most of our matchups or even who's in the playoffs for the last week or so. And once the playoffs begin, anything can happen. It's not unusual for an 8th seed to go to the Stanley Cup final. And I think that's what fans want. You know, yes, media likes dynasties. Okay, they're good, especially for the fans in that market. But I think it's better to have more of your fans engaged where everybody thinks they got a shot.
Got it. In terms of international exposure, I know you just played some early season games overseas. What are the leagues?
Early season games, we just played in Finland this weekend.
Yeah. What are the plans about more games, more expansion? Certainly the NFL is thinking and doing that. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, when you play once a week, it's a lot easier to take very long plane trips. For us, we had 2 teams open in Prague. We had the Panthers and the Dallas Stars play this past weekend in Tampere, Finland. You know, a third of our players come from outside of North America, and they're some of the most elite hockey players in the world. So in addition to every other good reason we might have to bring our game to the countries where these players come from, the players love it, but more importantly, it continues to encourage the development of world-class hockey players. Where our media distribution predominates in Northern Europe, but we're in distribution about 150 countries. We're going to continue to be playing games and satisfy the interest, the appetite for the interest that there is in our game. But for us to be putting franchises on the continent, I think that's maybe a bridge too far, because there are professional leagues in Germany, in Finland, in Sweden, and I don't think that they'd be thrilled if we started putting our own franchises there, putting aside the logistical issues of travel when you're playing 82 games in a 180-game-day season. We'd have to do something different, but I don't want to do anything that alienates the hockey infrastructure, particularly in Northern Europe, where hockey in most of these countries is the #1 sport.
Can we talk about technology for a second? So we're seeing things like win probabilities now on Amazon and football, and there's in-screen betting. And so can you talk a little bit about what technology is coming for the NHL and kind of, AI?
With Amazon, we do playoff face-off probability. We pioneered puck and player tracking. Took us a number of years to get it right because A, the speed of the puck in the game, and B, when players are all entangled with each other and checking, you got to have the right technology to sort it all out. But we know where everybody is at every point in time. We know how fast they're skating, how far they're skating, who's on the ice statistically, how fast the puck is traveling. This is another way from a data standpoint for fans to connect with the game and get inside the game, particularly if you're not familiar with the game and you don't really appreciate everything that's going on. Being able to delve in on your own terms, I think, helps do that. And yes, all this data, billions upon billions of bits of data, can be used for betting. But that's just another way for the people who want to bet or have an interest in betting to connect with the game. And if you have no interest in it, I think our game doesn't quite lend itself to betting the way football and basketball does. But that's okay. If you want to do it, it's there. And if you don't, you can enjoy the game as it's authentically presented.
Any thoughts on women's hockey and the growth of women's hockey?
Yeah, I think the PWHL is off to a great start. There had been for a number of years 2 feuding factions for professional women's hockey in North America, and things were way too fragile. But now that there's one league and they're together, we didn't feel the need to own it, but we have been fully supportive. And I think based on using our assets and infrastructure, we actually help them get off the ground as quickly as they have. And I think they're going to continue to expand, and I think it's great for hockey. I think it's great for women who play hockey and want to have someplace to go after college or national teams. And I also think it's great for young girls to have role models that they can look up to and say, I want to do that when I get older as well.
We think you should invest in the PWHL.
Will you represent them?
No, but I think it's a good investment.
Well, I think it's a good investment, that we don't necessarily have to do it or own it.
In terms of media, have you been surprised at how fast the transition's gone from streaming? We went from over-the-air to cable to satellite to now streaming, or is that just a function of everyone's got a phone and everybody wants to see games wherever they want to see games?
Well, actually, I think it's about connectivity, and streaming's pretty good. I mean, when you look at some of the 4K,
It is really good.
8K pictures, it's better than some of the cable and satellite companies can deliver, particularly in bad weather. But at the end of the day, we've got to reach fans on their terms. And clearly with cord cutting and cord nevers, you've got to make sure you're reaching those fans and would-be fans. But you know, it's interesting because cable went through an evolution based on local sports, and now we see the regional sports business on cable, you know, linear in trouble. But I think it's back to the future, because you're going to start seeing streaming bundles, and it's going to be the same thing all over again. And as long as fans can get what they want, when they want it, how they want it, sports will continue, live sports will continue to be the most valuable content that there is. And that's why you're seeing the deals that are being made. Yeah, there are going to be some transitional struggles in certain places by certain entities, but overall sports value will be maintained and continue to be important. So I think it's good.
I'm a buyer of that, for the record. I want to do a speed round, but before we do that, can you talk a little bit about philanthropic efforts? I think it's important for people to know kind of what the NHL does and what you do personally. I think it's important for the community.
Well, what I do personally is less relevant. What we do at the league is we think it's important that we can make a positive difference in the communities in which our clubs play, because we have this special platform, as all major league sports do. And whether or not it's Hockey Fights Cancer, which is 25 years old, to bring awareness and to fundraise for research, or whether or not it's all the various initiatives, whether they're educational, or making sure that people know that hockey is welcoming and inclusive. That's what we believe in, and we pursue programs. We invest our assets, our time, our money, our people to make sure that no matter who you are, you can feel that you have a place in our game.
And youth participation, what's happening with?
It's growing. It's growing. I can't explain. We're in more places, and as I gave the example in Anaheim, the more places we have teams, the more youth hockey there is. We in our clubs invest and learn to play programs, particularly in disadvantaged neighborhoods, and we think we and virtually every governing body for hockey, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, issued a declaration of principles which we led to say exactly what hockey stands for, because we think the attributes of our game, physical fitness, leadership, teamwork, getting an education, these are all values that are particularly important life skills for young people, and that's why we think it's important to engage youngsters as early as possible, not necessarily to turn them into fans, but to make sure they have a place to have fun and learn life lessons.
Is there a group chat with Adam Silver, Roger Goodell, Rob Manfred, and Don Garber? And if so, what was the last message?
No.
What's your favorite place to travel to?
My favorite place to travel to? I don't know. I'm an easy traveler. I like going to new places I haven't been. This past summer, I took my 2 oldest grandchildren to Iceland, and I thought that was pretty cool. That was before the volcanoes erupted, and I don't think our being there had anything to do with it. But you know, I've been to a lot of places. There are very few places in North America I haven't been. I've been fishing north of the Arctic Circle. You know, I've been to Russia. I've met with Putin. I met the Queen. I mean, those are fun trips. So it's more about what you do than where you are.
That's a good point to end on. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.